Hi, it's Erin. Welcome back. I'm going to talk today about things that you can't take pictures of. Well, scratch that. Not actually things that you can't take pictures of, but things that if you take pictures of them, you cannot necessarily sell them as stock. And some of these might surprise you because a lot of times we tend to think, okay, well, if I can't sell an image commercially because it has a brand name on it or a logo or something like that, then I can sell it as an editorial image. And while that is true a lot of the time, there are also times when, unfortunately, that's not true. And that's what I'm going to get into today. I'm going to talk about the restrictions that are in place for certain things, certain places, things like that. But I'm going to start out with actually talking a little bit about things that you can photograph and sell commercially that you might not know about. And I found this interesting. Now, the place that I'm getting this information from is through Shutterstock, and I will drop a link down below. This information is available to anybody, even if you're not a contributor there. In fact, you can just Google stock. Google stock. You can Google stock. What is Google stock? You can Google Shutterstock known image restrictions, and you can get all of this info. But I'm going to share it with you today. So I'm going to start out with some places or some things that you can photograph that you may think, I can only sell these editorially, and that's not the case. So, for instance, and I'm going to read you exactly what it says. It says, below is a list of subjects and places that are commonly believed to be restricted, but are, in fact, acceptable for commercial and editorial use. So, the Eiffel Tower during the day, okay, you can actually sell that commercially if it doesn't have any other recognizable logos or people or anything in it. The Las Vegas sign, believe it or not, that iconic sign can be sold commercially. Same thing with the Lincoln Memorial, Mount Rushmore, the Statue of Liberty, and Stonehenge. So all of those landmarks can be photographed and sold commercial stock, provided that there is nothing else in them that would make them editorial. And like I touched on before, so recognizable people, if there's any other signs or anything around that have brands, not that there would be at most of these places, but I don't know, maybe by the Las Vegas sign, there might be other things around and certainly lots of people around. So that may be one that unless you're capturing the sign itself, that you may have trouble selling commercially. But in general, these things can be sold commercially. So I thought that that was interesting. Okay, let's talk a little bit about events. So you may think, okay, I'm going to go to this event, this sports game or whatever, and take photos there. And I know that there's going to be recognizable people and, commercial stuff in their logos and whatnot, but I'll just sell them as editorial. Well, that's all going to depend on where this is. Are you in a public place where anybody at any time can walk into? Then maybe you can sell those. Or are you at a ticketed event that you either had to gain access to, maybe you had to pay to get in, maybe you got in for whatever other reason, I don't know, but it's not a place that's just open to the general public, that sort of thing. Maybe you went to a professional sports game or I don't know, car show that you had to get a ticket to get in, that sort of thing. In events like that, you always have to read the fine print and find out, first, are you allowed to take photos there? And second, do they list any restrictions on what you can do with those photos? So for instance, you may have seen this in some of my previous content, but years back, I was at a practice round for the Barclays. Am I saying that right? Barclays golf. Okay. And it was really cool when during their practice rounds, they allow anybody to come in with their cameras, long lenses and everything, and take photos. And I got to wander around, watch these golfers practice, take photos of, some really well-known golfers and whatnot. And one of them was Phil Mickelson, and it was really cool. I took photos of him in a couple different areas as he was practicing, and a couple times he looked over at me and like gave me the thumbs up, which I heard that he does that with photographers, and you can see pictures of him out there doing that and whatnot from what I've heard. But here's the thing: I thought these are really cool. I wonder if I can sell these as editorial. And what I found out, and when I started to read the fine print of going to this event, it was that you're only allowed to take the photos for personal use. So basically, I wasn't allowed to sell them in any way. I could share them on social media. I make prints and hang them in my house, but I could not profit off of them. With the PGA and potentially even the promoters of that specific event, you'd have to have press credentials to actually be able to, sell those photos as editorial images and whatnot. And I, of course, did not. I was just, somebody there with a camera, just basically taking photos for fun. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. Now, let's say that I was out walking down, I don't know, a street in Manhattan, and I happened to see Phil Mickelson walking down the street, and I took a couple photos of him. Well, then that's a little different. I'm in a public place. There's no rules for, profiting off that type of thing in a public place and whatnot. And I could have potentially sold those photos as editorial. But in an event like that, or a similar event that's ticketed and you have to gain access in a specific way, you have to read the fine print. Okay, so that's important. Also, interestingly enough, with Shutterstock, I see that they had a list of certain events that they said, we don't accept these images because we have our own editorial photographers covering them. So specific things and specific situations may vary based on, what agency you're working with, but still certain situations that are not going to change, as far as like what I just said about the PGA and the practice round and whatnot. So there are a lot of places that you could go to, even certain private places, and they do allow you to take photos for to use for like editorial purposes. So you could sell them on stock as editorial images. Some of these places include like private universities and whatnot. And when I first looked at this list and I saw Dartmouth on there, I went, oh no, like, I wonder if Princeton's on that list. And I looked down and I saw Princeton University on that list. And then I realized that it said not for commercial use, but generally allowed for editorial. And I went, phew, like, I was breathing a sigh of relief, because I have a lot of images of Princeton University outside exteriors of buildings and whatnot in my portfolio, and they tend to do really well. So it's places like that the public can just basically walk off the street and walk into, but it's still private property. It's a private institution, but they do allow you to take photos and use them editorially. So that's pretty cool. So there's stuff like that on that list. But then, like I said before, there's certain places that no matter what, and I'm not just talking about events, I'm talking about certain places do not allow you to use the photos even editorially. So let's get into this. This is, I'm going to go over a couple of these, and these are prohibited for both commercial and editorial use. Now, whether or not you can actually take photos there, I don't know. It would vary, because, I mean, I've been to places before, like historic sites, where sometimes when you go inside, they'll say, please, we don't allow, pictures to be taken in here. So you always have to follow the rules wherever you are. But this is interesting. So prohibited for commercial and editorial use. There's a long list here. Like I said, I'm going to drop links down below. But for instance, the Burning Man Festival, you could take photos there. They're not allowed to be used, even for editorial use. Busch Gardens Amusement Park. Now, I actually had a photo of one of the roller coasters at SeaWorld. Now, it was a really cool photo. You could see like the expressions on the people's faces as they were like going through like one of these drops and whatnot. And I had that up for a while and it actually did really well. But then one day I was looking at this list and I saw Busch Gardens Amusement Park. And although it doesn't specifically say SeaWorld, if you know anything about SeaWorld, you know that it is actually owned by that corporation. Okay. So I said, oh, darn. And I took that photo down because it's just not worth it. Okay. You could make a lot of money off of one of these photos, but do you really want to be wrapped up in that legal issue if somebody says, hey, that's me on that roller coaster or in that theme park, and I didn't give permission for this person to take that photo? And then you run into, well, now you're getting involved with the legal people from that theme park and the person who was in the photo and everything else. You just do not want that headache. So just, play by the rules, take photos where you're allowed, submit them if they're allowed, if it's allowable and it's not on one of these lists. Next, of course, Disney. And I'm going to say that probably most of us who've been doing this for a while know that Disney is pretty much off limits. I think the exception to that would be if you were actually on a public street on the outskirts of the property and something Disney was visible in that picture. I do believe that that is okay. Things like maybe, I don't know about the entrance, because I think once you hit the entrance, you're on their property. But maybe let's say that you're driving up, what is it, I-4 that goes through Orlando, I think, and there might be signs for Disney on there. You could probably snap a photo of that. It would be fine to sell because it's not actually Disney property. You're on public property, not Disney property. But that being said, I did also have, back when I didn't know, I had quite a few pictures that I had taken at Disney World when I was down there. And those photos, some of them sold well because, people sometimes are looking for like, Cinderella's Castle at night or one of the parades or whatever. And then I found this out and, you think about it for a while, but we're talking about a major corporation here. They have more money than probably any of us can ever imagine. And if you have that much money, I'm sure you're not watching how to do stock photography. Okay. If you're that wealthy and you are, buy me a couple coffees. If you've seen one of my previous videos, you'll know what I mean by that. But anyway, I have heard that they do go after people. They'll even go after the little guy and the little business. I remember seeing a post on Facebook from someone that I knew that she had gotten a letter to stop. She was selling something. I don't know if it was costumes or something, but Disney related. And they came down and they said, you have to stop. And of course, you don't have a choice but to stop once you get that cease and desist. So I have also read in different forums that they literally have a whole floor in one of their corporate headquarters that's dedicated to looking for stuff like this. Okay. They're very protective of their image and their property, and they do not want anyone to profit off of that. Now, apparently you can get permission to photograph things, but do not ask me. I don't know. I'm sure that not only would that be pricey, but you'd probably have to jump through many, many hoops to get that done. So unfortunately, if you're down in Disney or at other theme parks, wherever in the world, enjoy it, take photos of your family, but unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do anything with stock as far as that goes. Another one on here, Graceland. So no taking photos. I don't know. You might be able to take photos there, but no selling photos of Elvis's home. Sorry, but it's just not allowed. There are a couple other places on here that I'm not familiar with. I'm just going to mainly touch on the ones that are in the US and the ones that I recognize. Let's see, what else is in here? Top of the Rock observation deck in New York City. Now, I'm pretty sure if you're taking photos from there of the city, it's fine, but not of that location, if that makes sense, because I don't think that they'd be able to tell that you took a picture of whatever from that location. I mean, maybe they could, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that just means the actual observation deck. Okay, you're not allowed to profit off of those images. So there's some other places in here. Rio de Janeiro Botanical Garden, some places in London, Hyde Park, Primrose Hill, Richmond Park, um, Green Park in London, the Bellagio Center in Bellagio, Italy. So there's a couple things on here. So those are just a couple of places where it's prohibited to do or to profit off of any photos, commercially or editorially. Now, little caveat to that, okay? Let's say that you're in, I don't know, Disney, and you look down and there's a patch of cement, and it's just there's a really cool texture to it or something, okay? And it doesn't have Mickey ears in it or anything like that. It's just a cool texture, or a cool texture on the side of a building or a rock there or whatever. You could most likely take a photo of that and sell it as like a texture or an overlay or something commercially, because people, I doubt they're going to know that it's from Disney unless, like I said, it has something Disney in it, or a little, like, the hidden Mickeys that are there and stuff like that. So those are the little exceptions to this rule. But in general, anything that screams, "Hey, I'm in the Magic Kingdom. Look at this, Cinderella's castle, the parade, the this, the that." No, you're not gonna be able to do it. So I hope that that makes sense, and that would apply to anywhere. If there's something very generic that could be anywhere in the world, like, I don't know, a garbage can or something in one of these places. Not that you'd be taking a picture of that, but you never know. Someone might buy a garbage can. I mean, with stock, you just never know what people are looking for. But generic things you can probably get away with if photography is allowed in a location, but you're not going to be able to profit off of anything that that you can tell was taken at these places, if that makes sense. Now, I am not in the legal industry. I'm not a lawyer or anything. So if you have any specific questions, you're going to have to contact somebody else. I'm just giving you a general idea of this. Okay, now let's talk about some things that may contain like trademarks, business names, logos, symbols. Like, for instance, okay, you might have something that says Nike on it, or you might have like the swoosh. We all know that that's Nike. That's what I mean by like a logo or something like that. Something that's very specific to a brand. And when you see that, you know immediately that it's associated with, this brand or that brand. So, most things that are, associated with a brand, generally you can photograph them and sell them editorially, especially like if you're photographing, I don't know, I always use the Starbucks like logo and like coffee cup as an example. You could take a photo of that. You could sell it as illustrative editorial. Okay. And that is perfectly fine. And by the way, I don't see Starbucks on any of these lists. And anytime I have had something with Starbucks, it's been accepted and whatnot. So I think that's fine. But getting into what you absolutely cannot do, you cannot take photos of these things and sell them as stock, either for commercial or editorial use. And when I went through this list, I have to say that some of this stuff actually surprised me. Now, the first thing on this list, it says Bounty. Now, we're not talking about the paper towels. We're talking about Bounty candy bars. So you cannot photograph your Bounty candy bars and then sell them as editorial on your stock agencies. Interesting, because like I have photos of like Halloween candy displays with like the Twix bars and the Snickers and the Hershey's and stuff like that, and that's fine. None of those brands are on the prohibited list. Moving along, we have very high-end brands like Chanel. So think of the Chanel logo. You cannot have an image with any of that in that. It's not licensable. So that is not allowed. Christian Louboutin. Now, I think Louboutin are the shoes that have like the red soles on them. So not only is it anything that would indicate that it is Christian Louboutin, but also if you have a photo of somebody with their feet up, hey, leaning back, feet up, you can see the bottom of the soles of those shoes and they're red. everybody knows what those are. That is not allowed. What else is on here? The Harvard University, the shield. So I guess like the Harvard logo, you wouldn't be able to do anything with that editorial either. Little League. So anything associated with Little League baseball, okay? You're not allowed to even have a picture of that editorially for these stock agencies. Louis Vuitton's another one, high-end brand. They do not allow you to sell any of those images. So if you want to take a photo of a Louis Vuitton bag and frame it nicely for your beautiful walk-in closet or whatever, that's fine, but you're not going to be selling it on the stock sites. NBA, their logos and their team logos, and that includes their minor leagues as well as the WNBA. That's not allowed. Any of the Pfizer logos prior to it says 1849 to 2020. So I guess that during the course of time, like certain things aren't allowed and then they are. So that's interesting because if I went, sure, Pfizer is still in business, or did they become like some like joint corporation? I don't know. But if there was a logo after that, I guess that's okay. Me, I wouldn't take the chance just because it's on this list. Now, the next one I went, Pink Lady apples. And you know what? I actually have to Google Pink Lady apples and see, because if I saw a Pink Lady apple, I don't know that I would know that it was Pink Lady apple. I mean, I'm not going to pull this up on my screen right now, but okay. I don't know how they can do this, because I look at the apple and it doesn't look much different than other apples. The color is a little bit different. Like, look it up and see. But I guess that the whole Pink Lady apple is like trademarked or something. I don't know. That's interesting. So don't even ask me how they would know if you had like a photo of a basket of apples. How would they know? I don't know, but it's on the list. So if I'm ever looking to photograph apples, I'm going to make sure that they are not them, because apparently that is not allowed. That one really kind of like surprised me when I saw that. This one did not, however. The Polaroid logo and Spectrum, as well as any of their cameras, no, cannot do it. Very, very interesting. And it also says, let me see if this is down. Where did I see this? They do not allow the film border either of Polaroid. So I guess if you were to take a picture of like, I don't know, a blank one without a picture in it, you know how you have like the white border around and then about 3/4 of an inch to an inch on the bottom. You know what a classic Polaroid picture looks like. Apparently that allowed either. So that I find interesting, because I feel like I see this stuff offered up all the time for like people to use as photo overlays and in projects, but it says that it is not allowed. So stay away from photographing Polaroid cameras. It's interesting because you can't see this, but I look right up here and I have 2 photographs that I took of vintage Kodak cameras. And I actually had photographed them on black plexiglass and I edited them in black and white. So you have the camera and then you basically have a mirror reflection of the camera from the black plexiglass. And those I actually have up as editorial on several stock sites. But I could not do the same thing with a Polaroid camera. So that's really interesting that Polaroid restricts all of that. So there's several like surfing, Surf Ranch, Sydney Surf Pro, and World Surf League. Apparently anything associated with those organizations is not allowed to be used editorially and sold that way either. So that's interesting. Let's go down. Let's talk about some more restricted stuff. Prohibited again for commercial and editorial use. And here we go again with those Louboutin red sole shoes. They specifically list them as the red sole shoes here. So you can't even photograph, or you can't sell the images of the bottom of the shoes. Okay. The International Cricket Council trophies apparently. So, I can't go, if I go into the next room and get my cricket trophy, I cannot photograph that and sell it as stock. Very interesting. What is this? Corbusier furniture. I definitely don't have that. That sounds really expensive. I don't know, but their furniture is not allowed to be photographed. I don't know if there's a very specific look to that. I'm going to have to check that out too. The next one, this surprised me. For those of you that do a lot of illustrative editorial content, I tend to do that from time to time, especially some seasonal stuff. Lindt chocolate bunnies and Palmer chocolate bunnies. So two of like the main brands that you see around Easter when you're getting the chocolate bunnies, like for the center of your kid's Easter basket or whatever, not allowed for editorial. So that I don't know the details of this, but I would have to wonder. So if you had the packaging of the Lindt chocolate bunnies and the Palmer chocolate bunnies, that's obvious. The Lindt ones are very obvious. The way they're wrapped, I think that you can tell if you've bought this chocolate before. There's a very distinct look to that. The Palmer, I think, like comes in like boxes, and it would say Palmer on it. But my point is, I wonder if you were to take the chocolate out of the wrapper and out of the box, and you were just photographing it that way. I don't know, because potentially there is a very specific mold that they use in making that chocolate. So because it doesn't say, I would look into that further if you decide to do something like that. I wouldn't take the chance because it could be a specific mold that they make it in or something like that. And of course, listing the Polaroid cameras again here, because apparently that is a big one. So I have talked a lot about what you can't photograph, but let's talk a little bit about things that you can, that are generally accepted for editorial work. And I'll talk about that because these are specific things that are on this list. I don't know why. Maybe there's been issues and people have thought that you couldn't use them. Not sure. British passports. Apparently, you can sell them for editorial use. Coca-Cola classic glass contour bottle. Okay, Crocs shoes. So you can photograph your Crocs and sell them too. Devil Duckies. I don't know what that is. There's a couple like rubber duck type brands on here. Legos, the minifigures, and it says nothing about like the Lego like classic, like the regular bricks. So I'm guessing that is okay. Peeps. Okay. So things that, Peeps are like the little candy food, but it's very recognizable. So you couldn't pass them off as commercial, if that makes sense. Like anybody that sees one of those is going to know that's a Peep. Scrabble letter tiles that you cannot use as a commercial image. Very interesting because I've done quite a few use tiles, either like on the game board, like spelling out different things, or I've just used them in different things, ones that say love and stuff, like on books for like Valentine's Day and stuff like that. So even though they look very plain, you can't use them commercially. They have to be shot and submitted as editorial images. What else is here? Swan boats. I'm not quite sure if those are like those paddle boats that look like swans. So if you see something like that, you may think, hey, it's generic, and it turns out that it's not. So one thing that you want to keep in mind with this stuff is if you're not sure, do your research, because in this information, reading through it, I've even found that some things that are like distinctive features of certain products, even though it otherwise may be like a generic type of object, if it has something very distinctive that's very much associated with that brand, then it cannot be used commercially. And they reference like video game controllers. So if you took a photo of like a video game controller and you had like um, if it was something like the pause button, the play, stuff like that, that's okay. The forward, the reverse on like a remote, stuff like that is fine. But if there was something that's very distinctive that like only Nintendo has on theirs or only Atari, like what is Atari? Nobody watching this probably knows what Atari is, right? But anything that's very specific to those brands, and as soon as you see that, "Oh, that's what that is." And only that brand of game console controller uses that, then you cannot submit it commercially, if that makes sense. Some other things in this list that are okay to shoot as editorial are like the UGG boots, Viewmaster, yay, because I've done photos of that. I love my Viewmaster. Volkswagen Beetle and the camper van, that's all okay. Smirnoff vodka bottles. There's a whole bunch of stuff on here. You can check out the list and see for yourself. There may be things that surprise you on the prohibited list, but some of these are just like, with anything. Hey, you can't submit it commercially, but it was shot on public property or it's a brand, you can submit it as editorial. Another topic of potentially restricted objects would be when things are artwork. So there are like quite a few things that are considered artwork that are in public that you can shoot and then submit editorially. Like for instance, on this list, a couple that I recognize right away, the Charging Bull sculpture that's in New York City, Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro, the Columbus Circle Globe in New York. What else is here? The Fearless Girl sculpture, which is also, I believe it's right by the bull in New York City. You can submit them as editorial images, stuff like that. A Little Mermaid statue in Copenhagen. What else? The Unisphere in Queens, New York. So there's a bunch of stuff that you may think, oh, I don't know, it's artwork. Can I submit it as an editorial image? And the answer is sometimes yes. But now I'm going to give you some that cannot be submitted even as editorial images, even though you can see them out and about. So for instance, the Alamo sculpture in New York City, you cannot use at all for stock. Minneapolis Sculpture Garden cannot be used at all. World Trade Center 9/11 Memorial in New York City, you cannot photograph that and submit it as an editorial image. And there's a bunch of others on this list as well. Singapore postage stamps, some postage stamps in China. So there are restrictions and it's going to vary. And this is not an exhaustive list. So that's something that I probably should have said in the beginning. And I believe that Shutterstock also says this in this area, that there may be others that are also restricted to only being able to submit as editorial. There may be others that are completely prohibited, like I've been talking about, that you can't even submit editorial or commercial. And you're going to kind of have to find that out. Now, if you're dealing with something like a little small type business thing or like a something that's not really well known, like a place, chances are you're going to be able to use that for an editorial image. But when you get into these bigger corporations and these more famous places, if you're not sure, you probably want to check into it and see before you upload. Now, as far as that goes, some of the agencies are going to catch this stuff. Shutterstock is really good, I've noticed, with catching things if you submit it and it's not allowed. iStock is very good with catching things. They just caught, I had uploaded some photos for editorial work that I had taken years back in New York City. And it wasn't really the main subject of the image, but there was an artist painting a mural on the side of a building. And you could see other stuff going on in the city around it. You could see the rest of the building. You could see the traffic going by, everything else. But because it was considered artwork, they did not want to accept it. And like I said, it's going to vary by agency. Some are going to accept things, some aren't. And also be aware that you need to know this because some may accept things and things might get through that really shouldn't have gotten through. Like I said, I did have photos of like Disney and whatnot up on various stock sites. And you can still look on these stock agency sites and see images like this up there. But if you tried to submit them now, they'd most likely be blocked. And things haven't caught up with the photographers yet that they've been told to take them down. So it is going to vary by agency. Some are going to catch things, some might not. Be very careful if you're submitting to Alamy, because with Alamy, they're going to screen your images for quality. So as long as they meet specific technical requirements, they're going to automatically be accepted. And then it's up to you to go back through those images. If there's ones that need to be sold as editorial, you're going to have to check the little box for those images and make sure that they're only offered that way. Because if you miss that and something's sold commercially, and the person that buys it doesn't know and slaps an image on their product or uses it in their advertising campaign or something that's prohibited, that could end up coming back to you. So you don't want that. Also, I have noticed that with both deposit photos and Dreams Time, when I submit commercial images to them now, they seem to be accepted almost instantaneously. So it does seem like they're using some sort of a quality control program to just screen them, make sure they meet their technical requirements, and then they go live right away. I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating because those commercial images are often approved like that. And then when I submit editorial images to those same agencies, it still does take like a day, 2 days, 3 days, whatever. So it seems like with the editorial work that there's probably still somebody sitting behind a computer looking at it, making sure it's okay, and then either declining it or approving it. But for the commercial images, like I said, it seems that they're just screwed to meet certain, technological requirements, and then it's going live. So be very careful. Make sure that you know what you're submitting and that you're submitting it properly, whether that be commercially or editorially. One last interesting thing that I just wanted to point out, a situation where taking a photograph of something may vary depending on when you're taking it. And at one point, it can be used one way, and then at another point, it can't be used at all. And I'm going to refer to the Eiffel Tower for that. That's one that I've known about for years now, ever since they did that light installation and that light show that goes off at night. Basically, during the day, and I referenced this earlier, you can take a photo of the Eiffel Tower, can actually even be submitted and sold commercially, provided there's nothing else in there that makes it a non-commercial image. However, at night, with that light show, which I guess it's trademarked, you can take pictures of it, but you cannot profit off them for stock at all. So they can't be submitted as a commercial image the way the daytime photos can be, and you cannot sell it as editorial either. So that's interesting. As far as I know, that's the only one that I know of that's a situation like that, but there could be potentially something else out there. I don't know. So like I said before, always make sure to do your research if you're not sure, especially if you're new to this. I know this seems like a lot. Keep in mind that most things you're going to be able to get by as an editorial image, okay, provided that you took it on public property, or if you're taking photos of like a brand name item or a food item or something like that, like in your house or whatever, that should be fine. Like I said, the Starbucks cup, that sort of thing. But there are some that aren't allowed. So take some time, look at this list, maybe check some of the other agencies. Adobe also has a page on some of these restrictions. Some of the other sites may as well. I'm going to check. If I find a couple of more, I'm going to drop them down below as well so that you can do a little bit more research into it. So if anybody has any questions or comments, drop them down below. I will try to answer them. And as always, if I can't, I will tell you I don't know. If you have any ideas for any future content that you would like for me to discuss, let me know as well. And as always, please smash that like button and make sure that you subscribe. All of this helps me grow my channel, but you're also going to be notified when I release new content. So thank you once again for listening. Enjoy your coffee, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.